Hello, and we're here at Dreamhack. We're with Stew from Hi-Rez Studios, the publishers of Smite and Paladins. Now, I understand this is your first bigger tournament that you've run in Europe, like first with competition from all around the world. Tell us a bit about that. How has that been going for you guys?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, this is our season 3 of Smite Esports. We've run a number of tournaments here in Europe, but they've normally been with European teams. So this is our first truly international tournament hosted outside of the United States. So we have 9 teams here, 3 from Europe, 3 from North America, 1 from Brazil, 1 from Spanish-speaking Latin America, and 1 from China. So we really have teams from all over the world competing here this weekend, and it's been a thrill for us, and hopefully it's been a thrill for our European fans as well to be able to bring Smite Esports here to Sweden in this way.
Do you feel like there's like a difference in terms of play styles in the different regions? Is there any like indication of that? I suppose you might even have like. Do you have like any insight in terms of what the hero picking differs?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think. For years now, probably the difference between the biggest difference between the American scene and the European scene is I'd say that the European scene, which does hold our defending world champions, has tended to be more experimental, I would say, than the American teams. When we look at the teams that are from outside of NA and EU, those regions are newer, so those scenes really, like we just went into open beta in China earlier this year, for example. Our Latin American scene's a little newer. The biggest thing I saw there, we had some of the same teams compete at our World Championship in January, and even just the difference in quality of play from January till today was amazing. So I think it was less about them running different metas or play styles than just really seeing them mature in terms of the quality of the play. And I think even our Latin American team gave our defending NA champions a run for their money yesterday. So it was really interesting and good to see how those scenes are growing.
Yeah, so I heard that. And like, especially like getting China into one of these games, the esports industry there is huge. And sort of when they set their minds to a game, they're a bit like a smaller version, or like a bigger version, but like with a little bit less impact than Korea is.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm sure that's really exciting for you guys. What sort of hopes do you have for the Chinese market for Smite?
Yeah, we're very excited. You know, to us it was very exciting to see OMG, which is one of the major esports brands in China, supporting Smite. So, and it was an OMG team that came here. They run a Smite house. They actually have multiple Smite scenes or teams that they run inside of the league. So it's really been interesting to see how these organizations really get behind the game and support it. And like I say, to see how quickly their players are improving has certainly been impressive. And for them to be able to compete, most of our American and European pro players have really been playing since 2012.
Yeah.
You know, so they have a lot of catch up to do, but they're doing it quickly.
And also, like the thing that's always stood out for me is you see like these games like Heroes of the Storm and all these. Like after the MOBA trend really blew up with League of Legends, like Dota came first, but League of Legends really made it mainstream.
Absolutely.
All these new, they still seem to want to sort of compete directly with these giants. You chose a very different route with Smite, and I think that's worked out nicely because you differentiated nicely with that. Was that sort of like a conscious decision that, you know, I mean, these guys are doing this and that's nice, but we want to do something a bit different?
You know, it actually has a fascinating origin story in that our very first game that we made was a shooter MMO called Global Agenda, which was kind of like, imagine an MMO that was Team Fortress with jetpacks, was kind of basically what Global Agenda was, since I'm sure most people haven't heard of it. And we were actually experimenting with a new game mode in Global Agenda. This is like in 2010. And it had 3 lanes. There were some little defenses to take down in between, and then there was like bases on both sides. And you know, our designers were playing around with this, and they're like, you know, guys, this is a lot like this game, have you guys realized this? And as we were evolving it, I think it was really as we were going through that experimental process that the light bulb clicked, right? Yeah. So basically we said, actually if we did take that Dota style of play, but we did it in a third person perspective, that could be really interesting and unique. And really and I think once that light bulb clicked, our CEO actually said, hey, let's do it about gods and mythology. What's more awesome than that? And we were off to the races. So it was slightly accidental that we kind of came to that insight. It was relatively early. And at that time, obviously, League of Legends was still doing well, but it wasn't the global phenomenon that it is today. And so I think we were lucky that came together. I think one of the things that's worked out great for us with that perspective is that it also has made it really the first MOBA that really works well on consoles. And that's been a great thing for us that we've gotten into over the last year or so that's been exciting as well.
Yeah. There's two things there that you mentioned that I find really interesting. The fact that you talked about global agenda. I think Paladins was originally supposed to be global agenda 2. Is this true?
That is actually true, yeah. So I'm still not, those of us that have been around the studio, this is I think my 8th year, we're a 10-year-old studio. Those of us who were around for global agenda have still not given up on a global agenda 2. I would still like to make one at some point, but it is true actually. We started making Paladins to basically create a game that we thought would be the spiritual successor of the global agenda gameplay. We really love the team-based shooter, basically. So, we had learned a lot through the building of global agenda and then Tribes Ascend and then Smite, of course. And I think we always wanted to go back and give that basic team-based shooter gameplay another shot, and to build it as a free-to-play game from the beginning, which Global Agenda eventually became free-to-play, but it wasn't built for that framework. So that's actually a true rumor. It did start out as a Global Agenda 2, and actually you can do a pretty clean mapping of a lot of the characters inside of Paladins to characters that were in Global Agenda. So.
Okay, that's cool. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that you mentioned was that Smite has this very clear theme, and it's one of these things that I know a lot of people really appreciate about it. Looking at Paladins, I don't feel that quite the same theme there. So what was the thinking there? Did you consider going with a specific team, or what was the lessons?
Yeah, I think that's a good, we take a pretty unique approach to building games, I think, which people that have played our games for a while, I think people that grew up with Smite and were playing it in 2012 and still see how it's changed and evolved today, I think really understand it. But we tend to rush to get the game to a playable, basically alpha state that we can make public, and then we tend to iterate very publicly inside of the beta to improve the gameplay and the visuals. So actually, if you even look at the visual timeline of Smite, if you look at what the game looked like in 2012 and you look what it looked like now, is very different. So the original intent around Paladins was basic, which I still think is a theme we love and that we're driving towards, is to imagine this fantasy world that has kind of evolved in a parallel universe where their technology is changing and growing and improving, right? And I think you'll see us making the distinctions around that same theme much clearer over the next several months as we really start to polish the game and grow it and get it ready for its eventual launch.
Yeah. In terms of the gameplay of Paladins, you have these wide open maps. I understand there was a recent update that sort of slowed down the movement speed a bit. What was sort of the thinking there?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're very experimental with the gameplay approach. One of the things we're actually experimenting with a lot internally are the map designs. So there's some really great things about the really wide open maps, and there's honestly some really bad things around how that is currently implemented in some of the maps that we have.
Yeah.
So we found some new designs that we think are really going to work well, gameplay-wise. The movement speed is going to work a lot better on the newer maps than it does today. But there are some. But basically, our designers we're trying to get the game ready for this gameplay where there's going to be a little more places to hide, basically, than in the current gameplay. So it'll all make a lot more sense, I think, over the next 4 to 6 weeks as we kind of are staging in the implementation. Our problem was if we did all of that at once, it was going to be hard for us to do a lot of the balancing around the characters, and it was also going to be, I think, difficult for our players to adapt. So we really have like a staged plan over the next 6 to 8 weeks to implement a series of changes to the beta that we're excited about. Hopefully our fans will be as well. And if they're not, we'll roll it back, which we do, or do the next level of evolution on the gameplay, which we do a lot, and that's just kind of our style on how we develop games, kind of working closely with our community.
Yeah. Also, Paladins has a fairly high time to kill.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of having a bit higher time to kill and so forth?
Yeah, we think we like it. It encourages the team-based play quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
So, which there are pros and cons to that, but when you're trying to shape specific interactions between the characters, having a just slightly longer time to kill than maybe you see in some of the other team-based shooters, or certainly in like a Call of Duty or other military-type shooters, helps encourage that team-based gameplay quite a bit, and it helps enable some very interesting combos between the different characters where they're able to work together to finish a kill. So. We're still tuning the time to kill, but I think that will continue to be a differentiator in the game. Slightly higher time to kill than you may see, certainly in military shooters and in most other team shooters. Global Agenda was the same, actually, so some of that comes from that. The one change we did do from Global Agenda had a dedicated healing class that was kind of like a must-have on every team composition, and that extended the time to kill even much higher than Paladins is today. I think that's something we're trying to avoid in this game. So right now there are some characters that have some healing pieces, but nothing that is a pure healer, and I think that will probably stay the same. We'll see as the game evolves, but right now that's the thinking of our design team.
Okay. Also, I believe there's no headshots in Paladins right now.
A couple of characters have headshots. Real headshots for most characters are coming. Actually, in fact, they should be we're in our CB27 release right now. It just went live right before Dreamhack. And I'm hoping the more evolved headshot mechanic will be in CB28.
See, I was thinking, like, in terms of, like, you have Smite that's very console friendly.
Yeah.
I was thinking if this was sort of a decision to leave headshots out, because, like, that's like the biggest thing that it's really hard to implement in a console.
Absolutely. And I think you'll. We did leave them out intentionally in the beginning, to be honest, and I think as we've evolved the game, as we've worked closely with like the pro players that are here this weekend and that have been competing every week, I think we've seen that adding that extra element of skill we think will be really interesting in the game. It will give. As we've been playtesting it internally now for a while, trying to tune it. So I think you'll see some interesting things that we do around the headshot mechanic that are maybe slightly different than other games. But overall, I think it's going to be a good addition for the game. Like I said, we've been playtesting it for several weeks now internally. I'm excited about it. I think and the benefit is still only marginal, obviously, if you get the headshot, but it adds that little extra bit of skill and fun that I think console players as well as PC players will find engaging.
Yeah. Also, like, in terms of sort of the game modes, Paladins right now, it's just the one game mode, right?
We actually have 3 game modes now. So we have Siege, which is kind of a combination of capture and payload. We have a pure payload mode with I think 3 or 4 maps now on that. And we have a mode called Survival, which is basically there's a central point that fog encloses on over time, so it's basically last team standing through the fog on that side. So the siege mode, which is the one we're playing competitively here, is definitely the most played mode and probably the one we've put the most design attention to so far in the game. Our payload mode, though, has also been really popular, and there are some people that literally just seem to play survival 24 hours a day when we look at the stats. So we're pretty excited about that. I think for now we'll probably focus on those 3 modes and trying to make sure there's enough maps and enough quality and enough depth to the gameplay in each one of those modes before we add additional ones. Yeah. But we've experimented with a lot of other modes. I think that's one of the things I'm excited about Paladins over the long haul. And when we build a game like this, we tend to, like any good free-to-play game, you have to say, okay, how are we going to be able to expand content, hopefully over many years as the game does well and evolves. I think there's a lot of different game modes that our basic gameplay style would work well with. So I'm sure you'll see more game modes over time.
Another place where I understand there's been a lot of iteration is the cards and how that system works. What's sort of been the philosophy going there, and where's the thinking heading?
Yeah, you know, we started our beta in November. Yeah. We're on CB27, which is first of all incredible. That says we've done like 20-something patches since November that are have been major content patches with updates. And in that time, we have probably tried, no exaggeration, at least 15 major different iterations of the card system. So, and that was honestly somewhat intentional on our side. We didn't know where that was going to lead us, but we knew we wanted to do a lot of experimentation because we find that experimentation helps us understand our own game a lot deeper. Right? There's always a lot of what ifs. What if you do it this way? What if you do it that way? What if you do it this way? So by having tried all of these different things, I think we now have a much deeper understanding of what works well, what the problems are with each different system that you choose, and now can refine that to something deeper. I think what you're seeing the card system be right now is it's some of the early card systems actually had a pretty high RNG element to it. Yeah. And we've really, for the most part, gotten rid of all of that. And you have, I would say, not even for the most part, I think we've gotten rid of, practically all the RNG elements in the game. We've allowed players now to build multiple decks that they can change freely in the spawn area inside of the game. And we've added this additional element we call burn cards, which are work almost like items in a MOBA, where you're getting credits during the game and can buy them at certain times during the game. So we're really pleased with actually where that card system has evolved. I'm sure we'll continue to iterate and make some changes on it as we get more and more feedback. But I think what people see now is, or at least for the moment, our design team is very happy with. I'm very happy with, and I think you'll see that be a lot more stable now, and we'll be really focusing on bringing up, getting more characters, more maps, better characters, better maps. So that's really where we're focusing on now.
Yeah. I think that's about it, actually.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you very much for this.
It's been a pleasure.
And,
thank you.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to hear about sort of this very evolutionary sort of approach to game design.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's one of the things that makes us unique, and I think it's one of the fun things about getting into a Hi-Rez beta early is you get to kind of help us and evolve with us and help drive and shape the game. So if you're out there, hop on board.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.